Dr. Elena Vasquez had been studying rocks in the desert for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like this before. The red sand of Chile's Atacama Desert stretched for miles in every direction, and her small research team was camped near some unusual mineral formations that could hold secrets about ancient Earth. Elena wiped sweat from her forehead as she checked the seismic equipment one more time. The machines had been acting strange all day, picking up vibrations deep underground that made no sense. Her colleague Rodriguez thought it might be a small earthquake, but Elena wasn't so sure. The patterns were too regular, almost like a heartbeat. "Doctor, you should see this," called out her assistant Miguel from across the camp. He was pointing at the computer screen that showed seismic readings. The lines were jumping wildly, much more than they had been all day. Elena hurried over and stared at the data. Something big was moving underground, maybe 2 miles away from their camp. It wasn't an earthquake, this was something else entirely. She grabbed her binoculars and scanned the horizon, but saw nothing except endless desert and the setting, sun painting everything orange and pink. "Pack up the sensitive equipment," she told her team. "If this is what I think it is, we don't want our gear damaged." But as night fell, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover something important. She had always trusted her instincts in the field, and right now every instinct was telling her to pay attention. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the desert lit up like day. A brilliant white light streaked across the sky, brighter than any meteor Elena had ever seen. It moved too slowly to be a shooting star, and it was definitely coming down rather than passing by. The light was so intense that it hurt to look at directly, and Elena had to shield her eyes with her hands. The impact, when it came, shook the ground so hard that Elena was thrown to her knees. The sound was like thunder, but deeper and longer lasting. Her equipment alarm started going off all at once, and she could hear her team members shouting to each other in panic. "Everyone okay?" Elena called out as the shaking stopped. One by one, her team confirmed they were unhurt, though badly shaken. Rodriguez was already on the radio, trying to contact their base station. "Probable meteor impact, approximately 2 kilometers north of our position," he reported. "No injuries to personnel, but we're going to need a damage assessment in the morning." Elena stared in the direction where the light had disappeared. Part of her wanted to investigate right now, but protocol said to wait for daylight and backup. Her team was her responsibility, and wandering around the desert at night after what might have been a meteor strike was dangerous. But as she lay in her sleeping bag an hour later, Elena couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. That hadn't looked like any meteor she knew about. The light had been too steady, too controlled, and there had been something else. A brief moment, right before impact, when she could have sworn she saw the light change direction slightly. At 3 a.m., Elena gave up trying to sleep. She quietly gathered a flashlight, her field medical kit, and a handheld radio, then slipped out of camp. She told herself she was just going to take a quick look, maybe collect some samples if she found anything interesting. She would be back before her team woke up. The walk across the desert took longer than expected. The sand was soft and hard to walk through, and Elena had to stop several times to check her compass and GPS. But as she got closer to the impact site, she started noticing things that didn't make sense. First, there was no crater. Elena had seen meteor impact sites before, and they always left a hole in the ground. But here the desert looked almost normal except for some disturbed sand and a few scattered rocks. Second, there was a strange humming sound in the air, so low she felt it more than heard it. It seemed to be coming from somewhere underground. Elena followed the sound, using her flashlight to scan the ground carefully. That's when she found it. A section of sand that looked different from the rest. It was smoother, almost like glass, and when she knelt down and brushed away the loose sand on top, her light reflected off something metallic underneath. Working carefully, Elena began digging with her hands. The object was bigger than she had expected, maybe the size of a small car, and it had a smooth, curved surface that felt warm to the touch. It definitely wasn't a rock or any kind of meteor she knew about. As she cleared more sand away, Elena realized she was looking at some kind of pod or container. There were no obvious seams or openings, but there were patterns etched into the surface that looked almost like writing, though not in any language she recognized. The humming sound was definitely coming from inside the pod. Elena's heart was racing now. This was clearly not a natural object, which meant it was either some kind of advanced human technology or something else entirely. She should call her team, should report this to headquarters, should follow every protocol she had ever learned about unusual discoveries. Instead, she kept digging. It took another hour to uncover enough of the pod to see that it had been damaged in the impact. There was a crack running along one side, and through the crack Elena could see a soft, pulsing light. She pressed her ear to the pod and listened. Along with the humming, she could hear something else, a sound like breathing but slower and deeper than human breathing. Elena sat back on her heels and stared at her discovery. Every logical part of her mind was telling her to stop, to go back to camp, to let the authorities handle this. But another part of her, the part that had driven her to become a scientist in the first place, was desperately curious about what was inside. She found a flat rock and carefully wedged it into the crack, widening the opening just enough to shine her flashlight through. What she saw inside changed everything. Two figures lay unconscious in what looked like some kind of advanced medical beds. They were humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head each, but Elena could tell immediately that they weren't human. Their skin had a slight bluish tint. Their limbs were a bit longer and thinner than human proportions, and their faces, while recognizable, had features that were subtly different from any person Elena had ever seen. One was clearly an adult, probably female based on body shape and facial features. The other was much smaller, obviously a child. Both were breathing, but the child's breathing seemed labored and weak. Elena realized she was looking at 2 living beings who had just survived what must have been a spacecraft crash. They were injured, alone, and as far from any kind of help as it was possible to be on Earth. She had about 4 hours before her team would wake up and start looking for her. In 4 hours, this site would be crawling with government officials, military personnel, and scientists who would want to study these beings like laboratory specimens. Elena made a decision that would change the rest of her life. She widened the crack in the pod just enough to squeeze through, grabbed her medical kit, and climbed inside to help 2 strangers from another world. Elena squeezed through the crack in the pod and immediately felt the difference in the air inside. It was warmer and somehow thicker, with a sweet smell that reminded her of flowers she couldn't identify. The soft blue light came from panels, built into the walls, and everything had a smooth, organic look that was unlike any human technology she had ever seen. The adult being lay in what looked like a medical bed that seemed to be made of the same material as the pod itself. Her chest rose and fell steadily, and Elena could see no obvious injuries. But the child was a different story. The smaller figure was pale, even considering the bluish tint to their skin, and their breathing was shallow and rapid. Elena opened her medical kit and pulled out a small flashlight. She carefully examined the child first, since they seemed to be in more danger. There were no visible wounds, but Elena's medical training told her this was someone in serious distress. The child's pulse, when she found it in their wrist, was much too fast. As Elena was checking the child's temperature with a digital thermometer, the adult suddenly opened her eyes. Elena froze. She was looking into eyes that were definitely not human. They were larger than human eyes, with irises that seemed to shift between blue and green like deep ocean water. But the expression in those eyes was completely familiar. It was the look of a mother worried about her child. The being tried to sit up, moving slowly and carefully. Elena held up her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'm here to help." The adult looked confused for a moment, then reached out and gently touched Elena's hand. The moment their skin made contact, Elena felt a strange tingling sensation, and suddenly she could understand what the being was trying to communicate. It wasn't words exactly, more like thoughts and feelings flowing directly into Elena's mind. The being's name was Zara, and the child was her daughter Kaya. They had been traveling for a very long time, running from something terrible that had happened to their home. The crash had hurt Kaya badly, and Zara was terrified that her daughter might die so far from everything they had ever known. Elena found herself responding in the same way, letting her thoughts flow back through the connection. She was a scientist, she explained, someone whose job was to help and learn. She had medical training and wanted to help Kaya get better. Zara's relief was so strong that Elena could feel it like a warm wave washing over her. Through their connection, Zara showed Elena images of their homeworld, beautiful cities that seemed to grow like plants with buildings that curved and twisted toward twin suns in an alien sky. But then came darker images, the sky turning red, the ground shaking, plants dying, and people fleeing in ships like the one they were in now. Elena understood. Zara and Kaya were refugees from a dying planet, and this pod was some kind of escape, a vessel. They had traveled unimaginable distances only to crash in one of the most remote places on Earth. Working together, Elena and Zara managed to move Kaya to a more comfortable position. Elena used her medical knowledge to check the child's vital signs while Zara operated controls on the pod that Elena couldn't even see clearly. It seemed like the ship itself was some kind of medical device, trying to keep Kaya stable. But it wasn't enough. Through their mental connection, Zara explained that Kaya needed specific treatments that the damaged pod couldn't provide. Elena realized that without proper help, this child would die within hours. Elena looked at her watch. Dawn was still 2 hours away, and her team would be waking up soon after that. Once they discovered the crash site, everything would change. Government officials would arrive, the military would take over, and Zara and Kaya would become subjects, for study rather than patients who needed help. Elena made another decision that surprised even herself. She was going to move them. She remembered an old mining facility about 10 miles away, abandoned for years but still structurally sound. It had been built to process rare minerals, so it had its own power generator and water supply. More importantly, it was completely isolated and forgotten by everyone except a few local researchers. Through her connection with Zara, Elena explained her plan. Zara was hesitant at first. She didn't want to trust their lives to someone they had just met. But as Kaya's breathing became more labored, Zara realized they had no other choice. Elena climbed out of the pod and ran back toward her camp. She had brought her personal vehicle on this expedition, a sturdy off-road truck that she used for collecting samples from remote locations. If she could get it to the crash site without waking her team, she might be able to transport Zara and Kaya to safety. The truck started on the first try, and Elena drove without headlights, using only the moonlight to navigate across the desert. When she reached the pod, Zara had managed to create some kind of portable life support system for Kaya. It looked like a transparent bubble that surrounded the child, filled with the same sweet-smelling air that had been inside the pod. Loading them into the truck was challenging, but Zara was stronger than she looked, and the life support bubble was lighter than Elena had expected. As they drove toward the abandoned mine, Elena kept checking her rearview mirror, expecting to see lights from her camp or hear radio chatter about her disappearance. The mining facility was exactly as Elena remembered it, run down, but still functional. The main building had rooms that could be sealed off from the outside, and the generator still worked after a few attempts to start it. Elena helped Zara set up the life support equipment in the cleanest room they could find. Over the next several hours, Elena watched Zara work with technology she could barely comprehend. Zara's hands moved over control surfaces that appeared and disappeared like magic, adjusting treatments for Kaya based on readings that changed color and pattern rather than showing numbers. Elena helped where she could, mostly by keeping Zara supplied with water and by monitoring Kaya's pulse and breathing using her human medical equipment. It was strange how similar their basic biology seemed to be, despite the obvious differences. As the sun rose, Elena finally asked the question that had been bothering her since she first saw them. Through their mental connection, she wondered where they would go now. Their home was gone, their ship was destroyed, and they were stranded on a planet where they would be treated as either threats or curiosities. Zara's response surprised her. They had nowhere to go, she explained. Elena had found them, Elena had saved them, and according to the laws of their people, That made Elena responsible for them, not as a burden, but as family. Elena stared at Kaya, who was finally breathing easier as the alien medical technology did its work. She thought about her quiet life as a researcher, her small apartment, her careful routine of fieldwork and academic papers. All of that was about to change completely. But as she watched Zara gently stroke her daughter's forehead, Elena realized she didn't mind. For the first time in years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 6 months later, Elena stood on the porch of her small cabin in the Colorado mountains, watching Kaya play with a family of rabbits in the meadow below. The child had made a complete recovery and was now running around like any healthy 8-year-old, though she could do things no human child had ever done before. Elena had bought the remote cabin with most of her life savings after quietly resigning from her position at the research institute. She told everyone she needed a break from academic life to write a book about her geological discoveries. It wasn't entirely a lie. She was definitely discovering new things every day, just not the kind she could ever publish. "Elena, come see. This," Kaya called out in perfect English. The child had learned the language incredibly fast, much faster than any human could. She was kneeling next to a small stream that ran through their property, her hands cupped around something in the water. Elena walked down to join her adopted daughter. That's how she thought of Kaya now. Not as an alien child she was hiding, but as her daughter. The feeling had grown stronger every day, and she knew Kaya felt the same way. The child had started calling her Mama Elena about a month ago, and Elena's heart still jumped every time she heard it. "Look," Kaya whispered, opening her hand slightly. Inside was a small fish, but it wasn't swimming around frantically like most fish would when caught. Instead, it seemed calm and relaxed, almost like it was enjoying being held. Elena had seen Kaya do this before with various animals. Somehow the child could communicate with Earth's wildlife in a way that Zara couldn't fully explain. It wasn't exactly the same as the mental connection Elena shared with Zara and Kaya, but it was definitely real. "She's hurt," Kaya explained, looking up at Elena with those shifting blue-green eyes. "Something bit her tail, but I think I can help her feel better." Elena watched as Kaya held the fish gently in the stream, making soft humming sounds. After a few minutes, the fish's damaged tail seemed to heal right before Elena's eyes. When Kaya opened her hands completely, the fish swam away in perfect health. "That's amazing, sweetheart," Elena said, though she wasn't entirely sure how she felt about Kaya's abilities. They were beautiful to watch, but they also made Elena worry about what would happen if the wrong people ever found out about them. Zara emerged from the cabin, carrying a basket of vegetables from their garden. She had adapted to Earth life remarkably well, though Elena could see that she still missed her home world terribly sometimes. They had learned to grow Earth vegetables using techniques from Zara's planet, and their small garden produced more food than seemed possible. "Any news from town?" Zara asked Elena, using their mental connection instead of speaking aloud. Elena had driven to the nearest town that morning to pick up supplies and check for any signs that they were being watched or followed. Elena shook her head. "Everything seems normal, but I did hear something interesting at the hardware store. There's been a lot of seismic activity lately, small earthquakes that the scientists can't explain. The owner said it's been happening for the past few weeks." Kaya looked up from the stream with a worried expression. "It's going to get worse," she said quietly. "I can feel it in the ground. Something big is coming." This was another one of Kaya's abilities that Elena was still trying to understand. The child seemed to sense changes in the Earth itself, almost like she could feel the planet's moods. It had been useful several times. Kaya had warned them about a flash flood 2 months ago, giving them time to move their supplies to higher ground. "How big?" Zara asked, kneeling down next to her daughter. Kaya closed her eyes and placed her palms flat on the ground. "Really big, maybe a 7 or 8 on the human scale, and it's going to happen soon, maybe in 3 days." Elena felt her stomach drop. A magnitude 7 or 8 earthquake in this area would be devastating. The nearest town had about 5,000 people, and most of the buildings weren't built to handle that kind of shaking. "Are you sure?" Elena asked. Though she had learned to trust Kaya's predictions completely, Kaya nodded solemnly. The mountain is stressed. There's a crack deep down that's getting bigger. When it breaks, the whole area will shake. Elena looked at Zara, who was already thinking the same thing Elena was. They couldn't just sit here and let thousands of people get hurt when they had advance warning. We have to tell someone, Elena said aloud. But how? Zara asked. If you call the authorities and tell them an earthquake is coming, they'll want to know how you know. And if Kaya demonstrates her abilities? Elena understood. If the government discovered what Kaya could do, they would want to study her, test her, maybe even take her away. Elena had heard enough stories about government research programs to know that she never wanted Kaya to become a subject in some laboratory. But she also couldn't live with herself if she let thousands of people die when she could have prevented it. What if we found another way, Elena suggested. What if we could cause enough seismic activity somewhere else to release the pressure before the big earthquake hits? Zara looked thoughtful. That might work, but it would require very precise calculations. We would need to know exactly where to apply pressure and how much. I can show you, Kaya said, standing up and brushing dirt off her hands. I can feel exactly where the problem is. Over the next 2 days, Elena and Zara worked together to create a plan. Using Zara's advanced knowledge of planetary geology and Elena's understanding of Earth's specific rock formations, they identified several small fault lines that could be triggered safely. Elena had to make another trip to town to buy some specialized equipment, telling the store owner she was doing research for her book. She felt guilty about lying to people who had been kind to her, but she told herself it was for their own good. On the 3rd day, they put their plan into action. Using devices that Zara had built from materials in Elena's truck and parts from the abandoned mining equipment, they created controlled vibrations at specific points along the smaller fault lines. Elena watched nervously as Kaya guided them to each location, the child's hands pressed against the ground as she sensed the changing pressure deep in the earth. The first few attempts produced small tremors that Elena could barely feel, but Kaya assured her they were working. One more, Kaya said, leading them to a rocky outcrop about a mile from their cabin. This is the important one. If we can make this crack release its pressure, the big earthquake won't happen. Zara set up the device while Elena kept watch for any hikers or campers who might be in the area. The mountains were usually empty during the week, but Elena didn't want to take any chances. Ready? Zara asked. Elena and Kaya both nodded. Zara activated the device and Elena felt the ground shake gently under her feet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Kaya smiled. It worked, she said simply. The pressure is gone. There might be some small shakes over the next few days, but nothing dangerous. Elena sat down on a nearby rock, suddenly exhausted. They had just prevented a major natural disaster, and no one would ever know. She thought about all the families in town who would go to bed safely tonight without ever realizing how close they had come to losing everything. You did good, Mama Elena, Kaya said, climbing onto Elena's lap for a hug. You saved a lot of people today. Elena hugged her daughter tightly and looked at Zara, who was packing up their equipment with a satisfied expression. 6 months ago, Elena had been a lonely scientist studying rocks in the desert. Now she was part of a family that could prevent earthquakes and communicate with animals. Her life had become completely different from anything she had ever imagined, but as she sat there holding Kaya and watching Zara work, Elena realized she had never been happier. She finally understood what Zara had meant about family being more than just blood relations. Sometimes the most important family members were the ones who chose you, just as much as you chose them. Elena was hanging laundry on the line behind their cabin when she first saw the lights in the forest. It was early evening, and she had been enjoying the peaceful routine of domestic life when 3 small, bright orbs appeared between the pine trees, moving in a pattern that was definitely not natural. Zara, Elena called through their mental connection, trying to keep the worry out of her thoughts. We have visitors. Within seconds, Zara was at Elena's side, with Kaya close behind. All 3 of them watched as the lights approached slowly, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. It's okay, Zara said aloud, though Elena could feel her nervousness through their connection. Those are communication beacons. Other survivors are trying to make contact. Elena felt her heart racing. For almost a year, she had assumed that Zara and Kaya were the only refugees who had made it to Earth. The thought of other alien survivors both excited and terrified her. The lights stopped about 50 feet away, hovering in the air for several minutes before slowly fading out. In their place, 3 figures emerged from the forest. Like Zara, they appeared humanoid but with the same bluish skin tone and elongated proportions. Elena could tell immediately that one was much older than the others, with silver markings on their skin that seemed to glow faintly in the twilight. "Elder Thane," Zara whispered, and Elena felt a wave of respect and slight fear through their connection. The older being approached slowly, their large eyes focused on Elena with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. When they were close, "Enough." Elder Thane reached out and touched Elena's hand in the same way Zara had when they first met. The mental connection that formed was much stronger than what Elena shared with Zara and Kaya. Elder Thane's thoughts came through like a powerful current, and Elena had to concentrate to keep from being overwhelmed. "You are the one called Elena," Elder Thane said directly into her mind. "The human who saved Zara and her child during the great catastrophe." Elena nodded, unsure how to respond to someone who was clearly very important in their culture. "We Kakiyao have been searching for all survivors," Elder Thane continued. 12 families made it to this world safely. We have established a settlement in the northern wilderness where we can live without being discovered by your people. Through the connection, Elena saw images of a small community hidden deep in what looked like Canadian forest. The other survivors had built homes that blended perfectly with the natural environment, using their advanced technology to create a settlement that would be invisible to human satellites or aircraft. "You are welcome to join us," Elder Thane said. "You and your family." Elena felt a moment of confusion. "My family?" Elder Thane's expression became very serious. "According to our most sacred laws, you saved Zara and Kaya during a planetary catastrophe. This creates a bond that cannot be broken. You are now their family member, with all the rights and responsibilities that come with that relationship." Elena looked at Zara, who was nodding solemnly. Through their connection, Zara explained what Elena had never fully understood. When someone saves a life during a catastrophic event like the destruction of their homeworld, the rescued person becomes permanently bound to their rescuer as family. It wasn't just a tradition or a custom. It was a fundamental law that went back thousands of years in their culture. "But I'm human," Elena said, feeling overwhelmed by the implications. "That doesn't matter," Elder Thane replied. "The law recognizes the bond regardless of species. You chose to risk your own safety to help them. You provided shelter, protection, and care when they had nowhere else to turn. By our law, you are Zara's sister and Kaya's second mother." Elena had always felt like family with Zara and Kaya, but hearing it stated as an official fact was different. Through Elder Thane's mind, she could sense the deep significance of what had happened. She hadn't just helped 2 refugees. She had entered into a sacred relationship that their entire culture would recognize and respect. "There's more," Elder Thane continued, and Elena felt their thoughts become more cautious. "The bond works both ways. Just as you are responsible for their well-being, they are responsible for yours. And just as you have rights within our community, you also have access to our knowledge and technology." Over the next hour, Elder Thane explained the full meaning of Elena's new status. As a family member, she would be taught their advanced sciences, their methods of healing, and their understanding of the universe. She would also be expected to help protect and guide other community members, especially during times of crisis. "But first," Elder Thane said, "you must make a choice. Your government agencies have become aware that something unusual happened in the desert, where you found Zara and Kaya. They are investigating, and it's only a matter of time before they trace the events back to you." Elena felt cold fear wash over her. She had always known this day might come, but she had hoped they would have more time. "Satellite images show increased activity around your location," Elder Thane continued. sharing images that appeared directly in Elena's mind. Military vehicles, surveillance equipment, aerial reconnaissance. They suspect something important happened here and they're closing in. Elena looked at her cabin, at the peaceful life she had built with Zara and Kaya. The idea of leaving it all behind was heartbreaking, but the thought of being separated from her family was even worse. "How long do we have?" Elena asked. "Perhaps 2 days, maybe less," Elder Thane replied. "But there is another option. We have technology that can make this entire area appear completely normal to your surveillance systems. We can hide the evidence of our presence here, make it look like nothing unusual ever happened." Elena felt hope rising in her chest, but Elder Thane's next thoughts dampened her relief. "However, using that technology will require revealing our settlement's location to your military satellites. We would have to relocate our entire community, and some of our people are too old or too young to handle another move safely." Elena realized she was being asked to make an impossible choice. She could save her own small family's peaceful life, but only by putting 12 other families at risk. Or she could give up everything she had built here and move to the hidden settlement, keeping everyone safe but losing the home where she had been truly happy for the first time in her life. Kaya, who had been quietly listening to the entire conversation, suddenly stepped forward and took Elena's hand. Through their connection, Elena felt the child's surprising wisdom and strength. "Mama Elena," Kaya said aloud, "family means we all stay together, right? All of us, not just some of us." Elena looked into Kaya's eyes and saw the same determination she had felt that night in the desert when she first decided to help them. This child, who had already lost one home, was willing to give up another one to keep other families safe. Elena squeezed Kaya's hand and looked at Zara, then at Elder Thane. "When do we leave?" she asked. Elder Thane's relief was visible even without their mental connection. "Tonight. We'll help you pack only what you need, and we'll make sure this place shows no signs of our presence." As Elena began gathering their essential belongings, she felt sad about leaving their little cabin, but also excited about what lay ahead. She was about to join a community of refugees who were building a new life on Earth, and she would be part of it not as an outsider or a helper, but as true family. Kaya was right. Family meant everyone stayed together. And Elena was about to discover just how big her family really was. 2 years later, Elena stood on the deck of the research vessel Ocean Pioneer, watching dolphins play in the wake of their ship. To anyone observing from the outside, she looked like any other marine scientist doing important work in international waters. What they couldn't see was the advanced technology hidden throughout the ship, or the 12 alien families who had found a new home beneath the waves. Elena adjusted her radio headset and spoke into the microphone. "Dr. Chen, are you seeing the mineral readings from Sector 7? The formations down there are unlike anything we've documented before." Dr. Chen, her colleague back at the Marine Research Institute, responded with excitement. "Absolutely fascinating. Elena, your deep-sea research is revolutionizing our understanding of ocean geology. The academic community is buzzing about your recent papers." Elena smiled to herself. If only Dr. Chen knew that her revolutionary discoveries were actually the result of Zara's advanced knowledge of planetary science, combined with technology that was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. "We'll be sending up more samples tomorrow," Elena said. "The equipment modifications you suggested are working perfectly." That was partly true. Elena had suggested some modifications to their research equipment, but the real improvements came from alien technology that Zara and the other survivors had integrated seamlessly into human devices. The result was research equipment that could analyze materials and detect patterns in ways that seemed miraculous to other scientists. Elena ended her radio conversation and walked down to the lower decks of the ship. To any casual observer, these areas looked like standard research laboratories and crew quarters. But Elena knew the truth. They were home to the most successful integration of 2 different species that had ever occurred on Earth. She found Kaya in what appeared to be a marine biology lab, but the 10-year-old was doing something no human child had ever done before. She was communicating directly with a group of whales swimming alongside their ship, her hands pressed against a special viewing window that Zara had designed. What are they telling you today? Elena asked, settling into a chair next to her daughter. Kaya's eyes were closed in concentration, but she smiled when she heard Elena's voice. They're excited about the new coral gardens we planted last month. The fish populations are already growing, and the whole ecosystem is getting healthier. This was the kind of work that made Elena feel prouder than any academic achievement ever had. Using their combined knowledge of Earth's oceans and alien environmental technology, they had been quietly restoring damaged underwater ecosystems all over the world. Official reports credited the improvements to natural recovery and better environmental policies, but Elena knew the real reason. Elder Thane wants to see you in the main lab, Kaya said, opening her eyes. Something about the new energy project. Elena made her way to the ship's primary laboratory, which looked like a standard research facility on the surface but housed technology that could power entire cities without producing any pollution. Elder Thane was working with 2 other survivors, analyzing data on screens that displayed information in ways human computers never could. Elena, Elder Thane said, looking up from their work. We've completed the calculations for the coastal wind farm project. If we integrate our energy technology with the existing human infrastructure, we can increase power output by 300%, while completely eliminating carbon emissions. Elena reviewed the data, still amazed by how seamlessly they had learned to blend alien technology with human systems. Over the past 2 years, their research ship had become the base for dozens of environmental projects that were slowly but surely helping to heal Earth's climate damage. The beauty of this approach, Elena said, is that human scientists will think they developed these improvements themselves. We're just giving them the tools to make discoveries they could theoretically make on their own, just much faster. This had been Elena's idea, and she was proud of how well it was working. Instead of revealing alien technology directly, they were subtly guiding human research in the right directions. Papers published by Elena and her colleagues contained breakthrough discoveries that other scientists could verify and build upon, creating a ripple effect of positive change. Zara entered the lab carrying a tablet displaying news reports from around the world. The atmospheric monitoring stations are showing measurable improvements in air quality over the regions where we've been working, she announced. And the ocean temperature data suggests that our coral restoration projects are having a larger impact than we expected. Elena felt a warm sense of accomplishment. When she had first found Zara and Kaya in that crashed pod, she never could have imagined that saving 2 lives would lead to helping save an entire planet. There's something else, Zara continued, and Elena could sense excitement in her thoughts. We've received a communication from one of the deep space monitoring stations our people established. 3 more refugee ships have been detected entering this solar system. Elena felt her heart race. More survivors? Elder Thane nodded. Families who have been traveling for over 2 years, hoping to find the safe haven that we've built here. Thanks to the work we've done with you, Earth is now officially recognized as a sanctuary world by what remains of our civilization. Elena looked around the lab at her alien family members, then thought about all the humans back on land who were benefiting from their environmental work without even knowing it. She had become something she never expected to be, a bridge between 2 worlds, helping both species thrive together. When will they arrive? Elena asked. 6 months, Elder Thane replied, which gives us time to expand our facilities and prepare new integration protocols. Elena walked over to a porthole and looked out at the ocean that had become their home. The research vessel was just one of several ships now, each one appearing to conduct legitimate scientific research while actually serving as floating communities for human-alien families. Kaya appeared at Elena's side, slipping her hand into Elena's as they watched the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and orange. Are you happy, Mama Elena? Kaya asked. Do you ever miss your old life? Elena thought about her former existence as a solitary researcher working alone in the desert and publishing papers that only a few dozen academics would ever read. Then she considered her current life, part of a family that spanned 2 species, doing work that was quietly healing an entire planet and preparing to welcome more refugees who needed a safe place to call home. I've never been happier, Elena said honestly. Though I do sometimes wonder what my old colleagues would think if they knew the truth about where all these scientific breakthroughs are really coming from. Kaya giggled. Maybe someday we can tell them, when humans are ready, to know they're not alone in the universe. Elena squeezed her daughter's hand. Maybe someday. But for now, I think we're doing exactly what we need to do. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had started as someone who saved 2 lives during a moment of crisis, and had ended up becoming part of something much larger. A quiet revolution that was changing both human and alien civilization for the better. The law that had bound her to Zara and Kaya as family had given her the greatest gift of her life. She had found her true purpose, her real family, and a way to make a difference that would last for generations. And this, Elena knew, was just the beginning.